Vandy is preparing for their most important stretch of games in program history.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making us your first listen, and thanks especially for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the business. So I got a great show for you guys lined up. We're going to talk about the keys to success in this most important stretch run in program history. Going to talk about some accolades as we prepare for this run, and as we wrap up the bye week, some people are recognized. Diego Pavia, Vandy's offensive line, to be exact. We'll talk about what that means for the program and what that means coming down the stretch and all of this stuff. But again, want to go with what I feel is the most important run in program history, the implications of it, the impact of what's going to happen, how these games look against Kentucky and Tennessee, what it means for not only just this season but beyond. So let's start there. Actually, we'll start with that, because when you look at this game and you look at the impact of this. I want to say, I'm so used to saying game on Friday, but when you look at the impact of what's happening next week against Kentucky and then the following week in Neyland Stadium, the implications are massive, because each game now is a playoff game. So Vanderbilt, ever since losing to Texas, their first playoff game was against Auburn. And they had to figure out how to win that game after getting down early. They had to figure out how to win that game in shootout fashion, something that they haven't done, something that they couldn't do against Texas. So they had to learn how to win in different ways. And that's going to, I think being able to win that way and then being able to win the way you did 2 weeks prior to that against Missouri, where it was a slugfest, points were at a premium type matchup. I think being able to have the versatility to go out and do the things you need to do as the game dictates what you need to do is going to be a huge trait coming into this stretch run, because you have what I think are two polar opposite teams in style of play, in ability level, and all of that. Because against Kentucky, that's going to be kind of more mirrored towards what you faced against Mizzou. Very scrappy, good quarterback play, good run game, can turn everything into a muddy, bloody rock fight, and they can really just kind of drag you down in the slop and play that type of game. Luckily for Vanderbilt, it's at home, and luckily for Vanderbilt, they can play that style of football. A lot of teams can't, and that's why a lot of teams struggle with Kentucky. And now Kentucky just got finished whooping up on Florida, 38-7 against the Gators, who are way more talented if you look at the roster. But again, they've checked out, and that does wonders. But that Kentucky game, Cutter Boley is playing extremely well at quarterback. He's still very raw. He still makes a lot of mistakes, and this Kentucky team just still rumbles, bumbles, and stumbles, from time to time. But they're a team that's improving. They're a team that's starting to believe that they can actually do this thing. And again, they're starting to gain some momentum and starting to try to build a foundation for the rest of this season into next season, where I think they feel like they're going to kind of start making that upward climb again and give Mark Stoops new life, because that program had gotten stale. And I think there was some lingering effects from when Mark Stoops flirted with Texas A&M and, just some things that happened where I think the energy was real low with the Kentucky program. Guys, mass exodus from the portal from a year ago. You don't really replace it with all that much. And it just became a struggle this year to kind of find their way. But again, the implications of that, you win that game. That's your next playoff game. Your first playoff game was last week against Auburn. Your next playoff game is against Kentucky. And that game is not easy. and I know that their record suggests that it should be. I know they've been playing at a level where you feel like it should be. But they played Ole Miss tough. They beat the brakes off Florida. They played Texas and should have won. They played Texas to overtime and made some boneheaded decisions in overtime to lose that game, essentially. So, but they've been playing people tough lately. And that's a trait to where you play enough of those games. They beat Auburn 10-3 in a rock fight where there was no offense whatsoever. But they win those ugly games. They play ugly. So if you play down to the ugliness that they like to play with, it's going to be trouble for you because they're comfortable in that. And so for Vanderbilt, I think the most important thing to remember here is eyes on the prize, keep your vision intact, do your thing. You should, if Vanderbilt plays at their best and Kentucky plays at their best, Vanderbilt is the better team. So they should go out there and take care of business. If they truly want to prove that they're a playoff team, they have to pass some eye tests here. Also, I think that's it. That's an impact of the stretch run. You have to pass an eye test. And at home against Kentucky, you have to win convincingly. On the road against Tennessee, you just got to get a win, honestly. And then, of course, even after all of that, you're going to need some help. So the impact of this thing is very important. And then against Tennessee, obviously, you're going to have to win in a shootout because they're explosive. They don't really play defense, but they're explosive. So you're going to have to be explosive to keep up with them. Hence why the Auburn game was so important. So the impact of this is this. You win those two games. You're in the playoff conversation. Your recruiting is already taking off a little bit because you're in the playoff conversation now this close to Thanksgiving, which usually now in recent history, this close to Thanksgiving, you're preparing for off season. You're not preparing for a bowl. You're not preparing for anything. Typically, Vanderbilt has been preparing for nothing at this point, and they've just been kind of playing out the season. Last year, they were prepping for a bowl game. This year, or playing for a better bowl game. This year, they've got playoffs on the mind, and they're in it. They are in the mix. And for recruiting, for NIL, for getting donors, all of that stuff, this is great banner material. You can say, hey, we're in the playoff conversation. And if you want us to continue to be in this playoff conversation, because life may get tough after Diego Pavia. It might get, but then again, you invest in the program, it might not. It all depends on, I think if you get in the playoffs, I think, I never want to say guarantees because that's such a strong word and that, it's just such an absolute. But I strongly believe that you get in the playoffs, the donors who are normally pretty stingy, who are normally not willing to spend the money, will spend the money. They'll invest. Mark Byington got his basketball team into the NCAA tournament in year one, coming off of what was an awful run with Jerry Stackhouse. Donors came out. Money was there. They were able to get people in the portal. They're able to take advantage of NIL. I think Vandy's administration is starting to take notice that, hey, athletics can help the university. And we're willing to get behind it now. And I think a playoff appearance, a Diego Pavia appearance in New York with an armful of trophies would go a long way into solidifying that. Now, none of that matters if you go out and lose to Kentucky. And I'm fully aware of that. But the magnitude of these next two games are massive for a lot of reasons. Recruiting, NIL, roster construction being the main one. Because Vandy becomes a force within the SEC. They become somebody that is a true player in the SEC. I'm not saying they're going to be a powerhouse. I'm not going to jump from barely making it to a bowl game last year and winning it to powerhouse. But it's hard to believe they're going to regress all the way back down to the bottom. Because it's going to be hard for me to believe that after this run, they can't attract another good quarterback. Diego Pavia is not going to be the only good quarterback that plays college football next year or that played this year that's going to be gone next year. Like, there's going to be other good quarterbacks out there. There's going to be great quarterbacks in the portal. You got to find the right one. You got to convince them to come here. And I think it's a lot easier to do to say, hey, we made the playoffs last year. Our scheme is pretty universal. Our scheme is pretty diverse. Come play at Vanderbilt. It's stable here. We have money. You live in Nashville. Like, there's a lot of great things about Nashville. There's a lot of great things about this program. Vandy support is starting to sprout up around the city. I'm not even going to come close to saying that Nashville is a Vanderbilt city. I'm not even going to come close to saying that yet. It's not there yet. It's getting there. There's more support for Vanderbilt than there was even 2 years ago, even a year ago. You didn't see all that around town. You see more of those flags now. You see more people wearing Vandy shirts. And you still see a lot of orange. You still see a lot of Alabama. You still see a lot of whatever. But Vanderbilt is becoming more of a presence by the day. You make a playoff run, it might just grow even more. And eventually you keep building on that stuff. And if you're competitive year in and year out, you're making bowl games with the occasional jump in the conversation for the college football playoff. Hell, even maybe make one of those every once in a while. I think you can say Vandy has turned into a successful program. That's where the bar is right now. And then as you go, you can adjust the bar. Like, if it's not going quite as well, you can lower the bar. If it's going exceedingly well, like, you can bump that bar, nudge that bar up. So this game will kind of set some things in motion that I think could help this program be more sustainable throughout its lifetime, even without Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, because I think a lot of the other pieces will still be here, outside of the senior group that's going to be leaving. Some of those guys will be tough to replace, but again, it's doable. Like, you can replace those guys. It just may look different, and different's not necessarily a bad thing. So, for the notion that we think Vanderbilt's going to suck after Diego Pavia, that's a notion that I'm not going to have to worry about until January. And it's a notion that I don't necessarily agree with, because I think Vanderbilt has set themselves up, even just being in the playoff conversation. But you make the playoff, it strengthens it even further. Like, I think they're in the conversation to be able to go out and get a really good quarterback and be able to be competitive in the recruiting field. So that's the impact of this stretch run coming up. Most importantly, the first game with Kentucky. So just win that one. That's your most important game next week. Get some much needed rest this weekend, and of course, all that stuff. But it's things are getting good. Diego Pavia is starting to rack up accolades. This offensive line is finally being recognized. All of that is happening. It's a vital key piece to the psychology of this team as they embark on this playoff run. We'll talk about that next. Hey, but DoorDash. I want to talk about DoorDash because it's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia delivered in a huge way. 489 yards of total offense, 377 through the air, 112 on the ground, counted for 4 touchdowns. But none more important than that jump pass touchdown to Cole Smith at 1st and goal from the 4. Won the game and sent this team into a whole new confidence high, right? So when the pressure was on, Diego Pavia came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance was no fluke. Diego Pavia is on a streak. And just like Diego Pavia delivered for Vanderbilt, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period good through 11/18. Alrighty, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. Thanks for making Locked On Podcast Network number one in the industry. We love it. We thank you, and it's all because of you. And if you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is the place to go with Chris Gordy. So, man, this is an exciting time right now because the implications of this upcoming run of 2 games is massive. Last week was massive because you had to win it. There's no room for error, and it continues to be that way. And I think this team has handled that extremely well because the poise it took to pull that game off last week was incredible. And I think that's going to benefit, like having a mature team is going to benefit this team down the stretch. Now, from a confidence standpoint, right, you have to feel good about your chances in these next 2 games, right? And I think people are starting to get some recognition. I think some of the accolades are obviously racking up for Diego Pavia. He continues to kind of be on list after list after list after list. And the accolades just keep building up, man. And he's racking it up. And I think he's obviously going to be the most decorated player maybe in Vanderbilt history. I have to double check the records on that, but I'm pretty sure that when it's all said and done, he could be the most decorated. So when you look at the accolades that he has racked up this week, Diego Pavia, SEC, AP National, Davey O'Brien, Walter Camp, and Senior Bowl Player of the Week. So he's Player of the Week for all of those items there with his 489-yard performance against Auburn. He's been named to the Davey O'Brien, Walter Camp, and Maxwell Award semifinalist list as well. So he's on a bunch of those semifinalist lists. I presume that if he makes the playoffs, he's going to be on those finalist list as well. I don't know if he's going to win it. I certainly think there's a case that can be made for him. Although Mendoza and Ty Simpson and Marcel Reed, you have 4 really great quarterbacks that are in the running for all of these awards. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch to kind of see how this thing plays out. And not to mention Julian Sayin as well from the number 1 team in the country. Sorry about that. There's 5 great quarterbacks, and a lot of times you can't really say that about the quarterback position. So, but Diego Pavia is racking up all the awards here. And the most important, the Union, the offensive line is a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award. That's high honors. And offensive linemen love that award. And it means that as a unit, you're just crushing it, man. You're literally crushing people. So, and I think for the Union to get on the semifinalist list for this award, I think that gives them a little juice. I think for Diego Pavia, that gives him a little confidence in his back pocket. And I think, honestly, it just shows that these units are, Diego Pavia obviously doing his thing. Last 2 weeks has had tremendous stats. Last week against Auburn in a win. And I think you look at the psychology behind all this and then like what it does for the confidence of this group. And it's probably the psychology of it probably lies more in with the offensive line or the Union, which is a great nickname, being a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award. Like there's a lot of pride in that, right? There's a lot of pride in being a semifinalist because like you look at offensive line units, that's so hard to do. That is so difficult to do. And for this group, they came together as a portal group for the most part. They had to replace a lot of starters due to graduation, due to people running out of eligibility. And this group was kind of piecemealed together through the portal. So I think you take that into consideration. It's not like these guys have been together for 3-4 years and have been just mauling people for that long. They just came together. And that's impressive. That's impressive on a coaching front with Coach Klinakis and Coach Nady being able to put this group together. Like I think the reason they've been able to open a lot of things up offensively is because these guys are playing at a high level. These guys have gelled. The number of penalties, they had the Texas game where they had a lot of penalties, but for the most part, after the first couple of games, the penalties have calmed down tremendously along the offensive line. They're playing a lot cleaner. Cade McConnell is probably going to get the best block of the year. Like that dude he is nasty. And he's been great for this offensive lineman. If you don't know who that is, it is number 70. That guy's a freaking mountain, right? and he's an interior guy. Jordan White, who's pictured number 53, in the back of that picture is the center. He's going to be an NFL guy. I think this group, you're going to be surprised at how many of them actually play and have pretty nice careers in the NFL as offensive linemen. Like this group, it's just impressive how they came together, and it's impressive what they've been able to do from a confidence standpoint, from an ability to take their biggest weakness in pass protection and turn that into a strength. Because this offensive line was constructed to run the ball. If you look at their skill sets, they were constructed to be able to block, pull, and just cram the ball down your throat. They were built for the run. They've been dominant in the run from the first minute of play. Like they have been a dominant run team from the get-go. Watch them. It's a thing of beauty. Now, where they've picked it up is, and where they pick up a lot of their penalties is in the pass game, because they're just not built for that. But they've developed into that. And that's probably the most important thing, because when you're looking at, hey, what can we do? That gives you sorts of confidence. So, and that leads me into my next point. The confidence that you have from this offensive line unit and the reason why they're being recognized. The confidence that you have from Pavia. He's never lacked it, but it's going to take another uptick. We're going to talk about what needs to happen. What are the keys to success down the stretch? Talk about it next. FanDuel, something I want to talk about next. I haven't seen the latest odds on making the college football playoff for Vanderbilt, but I'm sure they'll put something out there at some point. But for now, in the meantime, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, wrapping up here, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen at Locked On Vandy if you want to follow along and follow the show. And thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcasting network in America. Thank you for doing that. It's all because of you, fans. It's all because of you, listeners. It's all because of you, viewers. Hey, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So, talking about the keys here to success down the stretch. Here we go. The keys to making it to 10 wins and that ever so coveted college football playoff berth. Offense. Honestly, you're on a roll right now. Just continue to find explosive plays in the run and pass game. Maintain your original identity. You still have to control the ball on the clock to win. You still have to have some semblance of that. You're not going to all of a sudden turn into a launch it down the field and launch it around the yard type team primarily. You've got to continue to find those explosive plays, but stay within your identity, because I think being able to adjust within your identity is going to make you more successful long-term than just completely abandoning it and going, hey, well, we can't really run, so we're just going to air it out. So you got to have some sense of that identity there. And I think they've maintained it for the most part. They've just had to kind of go win some different ways or try to win some different ways in the last 2 weeks. So this has been very good and very good adjustment, for this team as they look to make that college football playoff berth. But like finding explosive plays can come in the run game, which happened against Missouri. Occasionally some chunk runs against Texas and some chunk runs against Auburn. You hit some explosive plays in the pass game, and obviously you've increased that tremendously. So just continue to find those opportunities and find those chances to be able to move the ball consistently, because I think if you can hit, and you don't necessarily, and when I say explosive plays, I mean plays longer than 20 yards. So if you can chunk play your way down the field and you can still 8 to 10 plays on a drive, I still think you can burn enough time and control the game enough to where you can kind of make sure you can still put that pressure on teams that you're normally putting on them by saying, hey, you're not going to get this ball back and we're going to score on top of that. So offensively, though, you just got to continue. Honestly, there's no easier way to say it than just say, do what you've been doing. Continue to be explosive. Continue to be who you are. And feast. Defensively, got to find ways to get stops early. You were doing that earlier in the season. It's just taking way too long to adjust these days. I don't know if it's the speed, but you got to find ways to deal with that. When I say that, deal with speed. And you got to tackle in space, man. Like, those are the things that have plagued Vanderbilt's defense a lot. And I think they've gotten lost in scheme a couple of times too. Like, I think there might be too much on the plate at this point. Like, that can be very troublesome for defenses. Like, if you got too, like, I've seen defenses that have too much on the plate and they just look confused, they look lost, they look whatever. But you have to continue to find ways to get stops, and you got to do that early out of the gates. Like, if you can get a couple 3-and-outs early against Kentucky, you probably are going to kill some of their confidence, and you might be able to gain some momentum there to be able to make that game comfortable for you, and where it's not such a dang dogfight. So, but get those stops early. Find a way to adjust. Against Tennessee, you're going to have to, because you're going to be in a blender against Tennessee. Tennessee's explosive. Chris Brazzell is as good as they come. You're going to have to figure that out. And to be able to figure that out early, again, I think with Tennessee sitting on 3 losses right now, it's going to be, I think if things start going south for them, there's a chance that it could go off the rails, because confidence is a fleeting thing. And if your defense is constantly frustrating an offense that's supposed to be explosive and you're making them earn it, that doesn't always go well. Patience can go away. You know, there's a lot of things that can happen in that scenario. And you got to give yourself a chance. And Tennessee's good enough and Kentucky's good enough to where even if you do give yourself a chance, they're still good enough to maybe be able to say, whatever. But got to get those stops early. That is vital, vital, vital. Got to tackle well. Got to scheme well. Got to communicate. Got to do what you've been doing all year long outside of these last 2 games. Do your job. Know your role. Play sound. Play fundamentally sound. And just go out and ball. Right? And third, college football playoffs still on the table. We know that. That's what this whole episode's been about. All right. So knowing that, go out and get it. Go win. Make the committee keep you out. And when I say now go out and get it, like, it seems so simple. It seems so easy. Oh, go out and get it. Well, no, yeah, no kidding. Go out and get it. Yeah, really. Yeah, great insight there. But when you, like, it's not quite that easy. It's simple. Go out and get it. But it's not quite that easy, because Vanderbilt's never been here mindset-wise. They've never been in a go out and get it when you're talking about college football playoff or any bowl of significance. They've never been in this scenario where it's, hey, go get it. Win and you're in, which partially true. It's not necessarily win and you're in, but for the most part, you give yourself a legitimate shot, because some things can happen this weekend. But go out and get it. Go out and dominate. It's going to be something that you're not used to. It's not going to be natural. There's going to be a lot of, I think the pressure is going to mount, and I think that pressure is going to come internally. I think the fans are so jacked up and stoked that, they're going to be behind you. But you've got to fight that internal battle to not go out there and try to overplay like you did against Alabama, to not try to go out there and win the game on every play like you did against Alabama. I think the games where you stayed within yourself have been more successful. The games where you didn't have that pressure to go and win like you did against Alabama. For some reason, there was some internal pressure there, probably mostly because of Diego Pavia. And he'd probably be the first to admit. So just understand where you're at. Understand that it's going to be very easy for these next 2 weeks for people to say Vandy doesn't belong. You shouldn't be here. You guys are this fluke away from being 8-4. You guys are this fluke away from being 2-10. You guys, this team is not going to do it. They have no shot. They have no shot. That's what you're going to hear. It's just Vandy. Vandy's going to Vandy. They're not going to make it. They're going to fold. And you've earned it. And there's going to be a lot of people like me saying, no, they're not going to fold. So you've got to stay within yourself. Go out and get it. You earn it. The spot is yours. Go out and take it. Have that mentality. We're going to go out and take it. We're not going to be denied. Go out and take it. You weren't losing that game against Auburn. Why? Because you had the will to win. Now take that same mentality to Kentucky. Take that same mentality out to Knoxville. Go out and get it. It's yours. It's there. It's ready. You just got to take it. And they certainly can. And they certainly should. Will they? That's a question that'll be answered after Thanksgiving. But speaking of questions that are going to be answered, I will answer some more questions. We're going to get ready for Kentucky next week. And then we're going to keep this thing rolling, keep this thing rocking like a hurricane. Until next time, enjoy your weekend off. Enjoy watching some football. Listen to some of my earlier episodes to see what teams you need to root for this weekend. I'll give you two in particular. And Texas fans, earmuffs, but you're going to have to root for Georgia. You're going to have to root for Alabama. Those two teams are going to knock Oklahoma and Texas out of the way with wins. And that will help Vanderbilt have a case that if Vanderbilt can take care of business, they have a really legitimate shot at being in the college football playoff. But until next time, anchor down. Peace.